Richard, thank you so much for joining us. Now, just explain to our listeners your role, particularly with Tony Blair, around this respect agenda and around antisocial behaviour.
Okay, well, they're quite different uh, uh, issues. The respect agenda was really about getting uh, people who were not going to university, who were going to have a different kind of life, uh, a measure of respect and good treatment uh, in education, in hospitals, and so on. That Blair had understood that the effect of Thatcher had been to run down the availability of public services for people who were poor. And so he took on everything from Sure Start, which was a way of giving, poor kids a helping hand from the age of 5 to 6, to a policy which didn't work out, which was to strengthen the polytechnics, which in fact became universities. But the idea about this was that we had to respect people who were not going to be part of the upper middle classes or the elite. So that's what that agenda was about. And it was contrary in spirit to the crime issues about, antisocial behavior and so on, as opposed, I don't know if you remember what those were,
Oh, yes, we remember those well. We remember
Oh,
those
yeah.
well.
And which were rather prejudicial to working class people, because they assumed that there wasn't respect for everyday lawful activity. And again, it was sort of aimed more at the working class than at higher up in the society. So they were in conflict. And that
Oh,
was,
so you would see them in conflict as being two sides of the same coin.
yes,
Okay.
opposite sides of the same coin. And they had different sponsors 20 years ago. I mean, the Home Office was higher on the sort of disciplinary thing for, bad behavior. And people like Gordon Brown, oddly enough, were higher on the respect agenda as something that enabled working class people. So it had, like all social policy is management of contradiction. You know, Politicians are lying to you when they say this is a perfectly coherent policy. That's just bullshit. And this was a real policy, and it embodied those contradictions. So that's what it was about. And
when I went back and was reading the speech Tony Blair made when he launched his respect agenda last night, and he quotes you in the speech. Were you involved in the policy making process? Did they bring you into number 10? Were they asking you questions, or were they just sort of using your name in vain because you'd written this book that was sort of associated with what they were talking about?
The latter more. I did come into some meetings in number 10. I'm a terrible person in meetings like that. I don't speak off the cuff, as you can see, very fluently. And everybody had, it's true with a lot of the Blairite world was a world of people who were extremely vocal and verbal. And they were much more articulate than their enemies in the Tory party at that time, which is true again today. But it means for an advisor like somebody like me that you don't give people the kind of quick answers they want. instant, soundbite and things like that. So yes, my book was an inspiration for it, but I wasn't.
Mm. And let's look at where we are now. Of course, we're in the middle of an election campaign. We'll have more policies as the campaign goes on, but one of the pledges that Keir Starmer has committed to is a real crackdown on antisocial behaviour, more neighbourhood policing, new penalties for offenders, and I suppose a nod to your Respect agenda, a new network of youth hubs. What do you think about this kind of new vision that Keir Starmer is setting out in terms of antisocial behaviour and respect?
Well, I don't think it's that new. It goes back to a basic social fact, which is that the best way to control youth crime, which this is about, is to have the cops in the community. And that's exactly what the Tories cut out. They reduced the number of cops in the community a lot. And it's not surprising that kids who could go wrong would go wrong, because there's no governor on them. So in that way, it's a very traditional, it follows a well-established sociological finding, which is the presence of police is a great deterrent to juvenile crime. There are some new aspects of it, which I don't, of juvenile crime, which I don't think this policy can really deal with. Mostly the effect of the internet, which, we knew nothing about 20 years ago. And it is not only for adolescent kids a source of a lot of anxiety, it's also a source of a lot of copycat violence. So as I understand what they're thinking about, it won't really be able to deal with that issue. I want to say about Keir Starmer that a lot of it, as a social policy analyst, the thing that strikes me about this is that he's really a Bevanite rather than a Blairite. He goes back to a kind of fundamental notion of more cohesive local communities. Blair didn't really have that so much, with the exception of putting a lot of police on the streets. He was much more internationalist. It was the beginning of the global stuff, and I think what we're going to find with Starmer is that he's not about that. He really is about local communities. He grew up in one. He knows how to manage them. He has an instinctive feel for them, which I don't think New Labour really had.